Don't go in there. Emily, he locked the door. Brian's voice cracked with panic as he pounded on the thick wood of his son's bedroom. I think he has a knife. Emily didn't stop. She was already at the handle, already turning it, already whispering through the slit between door and frame. Liam, it's me. Emily. I'm not mad. I just need to know if you're okay. Silence. Then a muffled scrape. Brian moved to yank her back. We need to call someone. He could hurt himself. But she looked at him, steady and sharp. He trusts me. Let me try. Brian's hands fell away. The room was dark except for the pulsing blue glow of the aquarium in the corner. Liam sat cross-legged on the floor, his back against the wall, a small paring knife resting on his knee. His face was blotchy and wet, and his breathing was shallow, like each inhale might break him. I broke it, he said, staring down. I didn't mean to, I swear, but I broke it and now he'll hate me. Emily crouched beside him, moving slowly like the floor was made of glass. What did you break, sweetheart? He looked at her, wide-eyed, betrayed by tears. The thing I made for Mom. Her stomach dropped. That's what this was about. But I tried so hard, he whispered. I tried so hard. Emily reached her hand out, not to take the knife, not yet, but just to be there. Liam, we can fix it. I promise. You can't fix broken people, he said. The knife shifted, and Emily asked the question she'd never dared ask before. Liam, what happened that night when your mom died? 6 weeks earlier, Emily Ramos stood in the fluorescent aisle of the pharmacy, comparing generic cereal boxes to distract herself from checking her phone. She wasn't waiting for a text, but she couldn't stop hoping for one. She hadn't spoken to her father in over a year. He was back in Arizona, still bitter, still stubborn. Her sister was in Chicago, married and fully booked with a life that didn't have room for Emily's mess. And the guy she thought might actually stick around had ghosted her 3 weeks ago after 2 decent dates and 1 incredible kiss. So yeah, she wasn't waiting on a text. She was just wishing for someone to care. The box in her hand read Fruity Nuggets. That felt right. She exhaled and tossed it into her basket. Her car wouldn't start when she got outside. Dead battery. No jumper cables. She sat behind the wheel with the windows rolled down, the summer heat slowly soaking through her jeans, and let her forehead rest against the steering wheel. The phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Emily Ramos. Speaking. My name is Brian Holt. I got your number from a friend of a friend, Megan Phillips. She said you worked with her son last year. Emily sat up. Yeah, Aiden. Great kid. How is he? He still talks about you. Look, this is out of the blue, I know. But I'm looking for someone. Not just a tutor. My son has autism. He's high-functioning, but he's struggling. Badly. We lost his mom last fall, and he hasn't been the same since. Emily felt something settle in her chest. I'm sorry, she said. That's a lot. He's 12. Smart, sensitive. But he's angry now, and I don't know how to reach him. Megan said you were different. That you didn't treat her son like a project. Emily stared at the dashboard. The heat. The silence. How soon do you need someone? There was a pause. Yesterday. The Holt house was perched at the edge of a sleepy, pine-shadowed neighborhood in Ashland, Oregon. It wasn't fancy, but it looked tired, like the family inside had stopped keeping up with time. The grass was patchy. The porch light was still on at 10 in the morning. Brian met her at the door, 40-ish, scruffy, in an old flannel that didn't quite hide the fact that he'd lost weight. His handshake was too firm, the kind that said he didn't know how else to be polite. Thanks for coming. No problem, she said. He hesitated. You sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want me to? He blinked, then smiled. Half apology, half surrender. Come in. The first time she met Liam, he was silent. She found him on the back porch, sorting Legos by color into dozens of neat piles. He didn't look up when she sat down beside him. I like the red ones best, she said. They feel warmer. Still nothing. She tried again. You ever build something with no instructions, just from your head? He reached for a blue piece. Emily watched. Quiet. Patient. 10 minutes passed before he spoke. I built a city once. Yeah. It had a hospital and a train station. But no jail. Because I don't believe in jail. Emily smiled. That makes 2 of us. The days stretched and folded into each other. Mornings with Liam started rough, but slowly smoothed into something softer. She didn't push. She just showed up. Every time. She brought her own puzzle pieces, and over time, he began to hand her his. He had rules. No touching without asking, no surprise noises, and never bring up his mom. Emily followed them like gospel. One day, he let her listen to the song he played on repeat, an old Elton John track, Rocket Man. He didn't say why he loved it. She didn't ask. Another day, he asked if she believed in ghosts. Sometimes, she said. Depends what kind. He thought about that. I think my mom might be one. Emily didn't flinch. What makes you think that? I hear her sometimes. Right before I fall asleep. Brian worked too much and worried even more. He didn't get it, not really, but he wanted to. That counted for something. He didn't know how to talk to Liam. Didn't know how to talk to Emily either, at first. But then one night she stayed late after Liam had a meltdown, and they sat on the porch in silence until he finally asked, "Do you think I'm failing him?" She didn't answer right away. "I think you're scared," she said. He looked at her, eyes red. "I think you're still grieving too." He nodded. Just once. The real shift came on a rainy Friday. Liam had built a model rocket from scratch. It had taken him weeks. Emily had helped glue the pieces, but it was his project, his mission. He told her it was for his mom. "It's going to fly up and find her," he said. "So she knows I still love her." Emily felt her throat close, but she smiled and said, "She's going to be proud of you." But the rocket misfired. It cracked on the launch pad, pieces splintering across the wet grass. Liam froze. Then he screamed, a guttural, raw sound, and ran. Emily chased him through the trees behind the yard, shouting his name. He didn't stop. That night, he locked himself in his room with a knife. Now, in that dim room filled with old toys and broken dreams, Emily saw something fragile flicker in Liam's face. "What happened that night when your mom died?" she asked again. And Liam looked up, eyes full of fear and guilt. "She told me it was my fault." Emily's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Liam held out the knife, not toward her, but away from himself. "I made her cry," he said. "I told her I hated her. And then she left. And she never came back." Emily didn't say, "That's not your fault." She didn't say, "She didn't mean it." She said the only thing she could. "I believe you." Liam started to cry. And that was when Brian pushed open the door, breathless. "I found the letter," he said, holding a torn envelope in one shaking hand. "She wrote something before she died. And it changes everything." The letter was in his hand, torn at the edges, like it had been folded and unfolded 100 times. Brian didn't move any closer. He just stood there in the doorway, soaked in shadow, holding it out like a live wire. Emily rose slowly from the floor. Liam stayed where he was, rocking slightly, arms wrapped around his knees, eyes on the carpet. "What do you mean it changes everything?" she asked. Brian's voice was tight. "She didn't leave because of him. She left because of me." Emily took a step toward him. "What are you talking about?" He looked at her, then at his son. I think he needs to hear it too." Emily nodded. She walked back to Liam and sat beside him again. "Is that okay, sweetheart?" she asked gently. "Can we listen together?" Liam hesitated, then gave the smallest nod. Brian knelt in the doorway, rested the letter on his thigh, and began to read. "Brian, if you're reading this, I couldn't say it to your face. I wish I was stronger. I wish I could be the mother Liam needs. But something's broken in me, and I don't know how to fix it. I've tried. I really have." Brian's hands trembled. He paused, took a breath. "Please don't let Liam think this is about him. He's the only good thing I ever did. But I can't keep pretending anymore. I'm tired of hiding the panic attacks, the crying in the car, the way everything feels heavy and cold, even when it shouldn't. I know he needs more than what I have left." The room was silent except for the soft hum of the aquarium pump. "I need you to be strong for him. Stronger than I ever was. And if he ever says he hates me, don't let him carry it. He's just a kid. Tell him I love him. Over and over. Until he believes it again." Brian folded the letter. Liam didn't move. But the tears were falling, silent and unbroken. "She didn't mean it," Brian said, voice cracking. "She was sick, buddy. And I didn't see it. I didn't help her the way I should have. That's on me. Not you." Liam's shoulders trembled. "She didn't say goodbye." "I know," Brian whispered. "But she left this. She wanted you to know she loved you." Emily placed a hand on Liam's, light and still. He didn't pull away. "I told her I hated her," he said again. But this time it wasn't defiant. It was a confession. "You didn't know," Emily said. "You were hurting. And so was she. But love doesn't break that easily, Liam. I think she knew you didn't mean it." Liam looked at his father, then at Emily, and for the first time in 6 weeks, his eyes softened. Can I fix the rocket? Brian swallowed hard. Yeah, we'll fix it together. Later that night, after Liam had finally fallen asleep, after Emily had helped him clean up the shattered pieces of his project and tape them into a new plan, she stood in the kitchen washing her hands, trying not to let the emotion catch up with her. Brian leaned in the doorway, arms crossed, that same tired look on his face. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come here, he said. Emily dried her hands and glanced over. You would have figured it out. He smiled just barely. I'm not so sure. She turned to face him. You didn't fail him, Brian. You're just in the middle of it. He looked down, then back up. I didn't know what was in that letter. Not until tonight. I found it buried in an old box in the closet. I think she meant for me to find it earlier, but I wasn't ready to look. Emily nodded. She understood that kind of delay. The kind where your heart isn't ready for the truth yet. Brian ran a hand through his hair. I keep thinking about what Liam said. That she told him it was his fault. That doesn't sound like her. She wasn't herself anymore, Emily said gently. She was slipping, and he didn't know how to understand that. Brian was quiet for a long time. Do you think he's going to be okay? He asked. Emily didn't answer right away. I think he's going to carry this for a long time. But I also think he's starting to believe he doesn't have to carry it alone. The next morning, Liam woke up before sunrise and was already in the garage when Emily arrived. He didn't say hello, just handed her a screwdriver and pointed at the rocket pieces laid out on the table like surgical tools. She didn't ask questions. She just rolled up her sleeves and got to work. As they glued and rewired and reassembled, Liam talked. About school. About how the other kids thought he was weird because he didn't look them in the eye or laugh at their jokes. About how he missed his mom's smell. About the night she died. How he waited by the window thinking she'd come back, even when the police car pulled into the driveway. Emily listened, matching his rhythm, her hands steady even as her throat tightened. He finally said, I don't think she's a ghost. I think she's just gone. Emily paused. That's okay too. He didn't answer, but he didn't flinch when she gently bumped his elbow in quiet solidarity. That night, they tried again. The new rocket wasn't perfect. The paint was still drying and the wiring was a little messy, but it stood tall. Brian stood beside them in the backyard, holding a flashlight. Emily knelt next to Liam, helping him light the fuse. Think it'll work this time? Brian asked. Liam didn't answer. He was focused. And then, with a sputter and a shriek, the rocket launched, wobbling, tilting, but climbing. Higher than before. High enough to clear the trees. It exploded in a burst of white light and glittered ash. They all stood still, looking up. After a moment, Liam whispered, I think she saw that. Brian reached for his hand, hesitant. Liam didn't pull away. Emily smiled. Hope isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just the sound of a boy letting someone hold his hand. But later, as Emily packed up her things in the kitchen, she noticed something. The envelope. The one Brian had read from. It was still on the counter. Open. But something was off. The handwriting on the outside. It wasn't addressed to Brian. It was addressed to Liam. Emily's chest tightened. She picked it up carefully. It wasn't the same envelope. And inside was a second letter. She started reading. By the second line, her hands began to shake. Liam, I need to tell you something no one else knows. Emily stood in the kitchen with the letter trembling in her hands. Her eyes scanned the first few lines again, slower this time, hoping she'd misunderstood. But the words didn't change. Liam, I need to tell you something no one else knows. You may not understand it now, but one day you will. I never wanted to leave you. But something happened that night. Something I couldn't fix. The room felt suddenly too small. Too quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of the wall clock, the soft rustle of the paper in her fingers. It all pressed in, loud and hollow. Brian's footsteps creaked on the stairs. Emily folded the letter back into the envelope and set it gently on the counter, like it might break. She turned toward the stairs, just as he came into view. He stopped when he saw her face. What is it? Her voice barely came out. There's a second letter. He frowned. What? This one's for Liam. She nodded toward the counter. It was under the other one. Brian crossed the kitchen in 2 steps. He looked at the envelope, then picked it up. His jaw tensed as he scanned the first line. His voice was hoarse. I didn't see this. Emily nodded. I think she hid it. Or maybe she meant to give it to him directly. I don't know. But, Brian. He looked up. You didn't read the rest, did you? No. What? She hesitated, then said it. She says something happened that night. Something she couldn't fix. The air in the kitchen shifted. A small, invisible fracture formed between them. Brian blinked, his breath caught halfway. Something like what? He asked. But he already sounded afraid of the answer. Emily shook her head. I don't know. But she wasn't just saying goodbye. They didn't wake Liam that night. They let him sleep, wrapped in the first real calm he'd had in months. Emily stayed on the couch, the letter still folded on the table beside her. She didn't open it again. Not yet. Instead, she stared at the ceiling in the dark, trying to fit together a puzzle with no edges. What could Diane have meant? Something happened. Was she talking about the night she died? Or something earlier? Did Liam see something? Do something? Or did someone else? The guilt in his voice. The way he clutched at blame like it was a blanket he was afraid to let go of. Something didn't add up. At 3:42 a.m., she finally drifted off. By morning, Liam was in the kitchen making pancakes. He wasn't humming, exactly, but he wasn't silent either. Emily joined him and passed the spatula wordlessly. It had become their routine, no greetings, just motion. Brian was quieter than usual. He kept glancing at the letter but didn't touch it. When Liam went to brush his teeth, Brian leaned in. Should we give it to him? Emily looked at the envelope. Eventually. Not yet. Why not? Because if she's saying there's more to the story, then we need to be ready for what that means. Brian ran a hand over his mouth. You think there's something we don't know? I know there is, she said quietly. But I don't think Liam knows either. Not everything. Brian sat down, head in his hands. I thought we were finally turning a corner, he said. We are, Emily said. But there's something buried, Brian. Something he's carrying, whether he realizes it or not. And I think it's connected to why Diane left that night. Brian didn't respond. Emily leaned forward. Tell me about that night. He shook his head. I already did. No. You told me what happened after she left. What about before? He was quiet. Then, we fought. Emily waited. She was getting worse. Moody, distant. But that night was bad. She accused me of not seeing her. Of ignoring how hard it had gotten. I told her I didn't know how to help someone who wouldn't tell me what she needed. His voice was low now. She said I should have known. That if I really loved her, I'd have noticed before she started breaking. He looked up at Emily. And I said, if you're that far gone, maybe you're not the best person to raise Liam right now. Silence. Emily didn't flinch, but her face softened. Brian went on. She went upstairs. I thought she was cooling off. But a few minutes later, the front door slammed. And Liam. He was in the garage. He didn't see us fighting. Emily sat back. He told me he said something to her. Something cruel. Brian blinked. He did. He told her he hated her. Brian closed his eyes. God. And she walked out after that. Not because of it. But maybe she was already breaking, Emily said. And that pushed her over the edge. Neither of them said what they were both thinking. Maybe Diane wasn't the only one carrying guilt. Later that day, Emily took Liam to the park. They brought a kite, a clumsy, tattered thing he'd found in the garage, and insisted on flying. Emily didn't argue. The wind was patchy. The kite refused to lift. Liam scowled, tugged at the string. This is stupid, he muttered. Emily crouched beside him. It's not stupid. It's just hard. He yanked again. She used to help me with this. She'd run ahead and scream like we were in a movie. Emily smiled softly. That sounds like her. He didn't look at her. Sometimes I think I remember it wrong. You don't. But what if I do? What if I made her better in my head than she really was? Emily put a hand on the grass, grounding herself. That's grief. It messes with your memory. Makes some things too sharp and others too soft. Liam glanced over. Did your mom die? He asked. Emily's mouth opened, but nothing came out at first. Then no. But someone I loved did. Liam waited. My older brother, she said finally. He was 17. I was 9. Liam blinked. What happened? He drowned. At a lake. He was showing off. Dared himself to swim across. She didn't tell him the rest. That she'd been the one who dared him. That she'd teased him until he dove in. I know what it feels like, she said. To carry something too heavy for your age. Liam looked down at the string in his hand. I think she was sad all the time, he said. But she smiled so big, I thought it meant she was okay. Emily swallowed. That's the thing about sadness. It hides under smiles real well. He handed her the kite string. Will you run with it? She took it. They ran together across the hill, laughing when the kite caught for a second and spun, then tumbled down again. For a moment, It felt like the sadness had loosened its grip. That night, after Liam was asleep, Emily sat on the porch with the letter in her lap. Brian joined her. "Can I?" he asked. Emily handed it to him. He opened it. Read silently. Halfway through, his expression changed. When he looked up, his eyes were wide. "What?" she asked. He handed it to her. "Read the last part." Emily turned to the bottom of the letter. "And I need you to know the truth. That night, I found something on your dad's phone. A message from someone named Anna. I didn't read it all, but I read enough. And I realized I wasn't just losing myself. I was losing us. I couldn't take one more lie. So I walked. I thought if I got away, I could find my way back. But I never made it." Emily looked up slowly. Brian's face was pale. "I didn't. I never." But she could see it now, in the way his jaw clenched, in the way his eyes avoided hers. "Brian," she said. "Who is Anna?" He didn't answer. Not right away. Then, quietly, he said, "She was someone I used to work with." Emily's voice was ice. "Did Diane know about her before that night?" "I don't think so." Emily stared at him. "And Liam's been blaming himself all this time." Brian looked away. The silence between them was louder than any scream. Emily stood up from the porch steps like she'd been burned. "I need to take a walk," she said, her voice sharper than she meant. Brian rose too. "Emily, wait." She shook her head. "No, you don't get to explain. Not right now." The screen door creaked behind her as she stepped out into the yard. The air was cool, the kind of late summer chill that came after a hot day. Her shoes crunched on gravel as she reached the sidewalk and turned left, walking fast, arms crossed tight. Her mind spun. Liam had been drowning in guilt for months, convinced he'd pushed his mother away with one cruel, frightened sentence. And all this time, the real fracture hadn't even started with him. It had started with Brian. A message, a lie, a betrayal Diane hadn't spoken aloud, but had buried in a letter she never meant for anyone else to read. Emily stopped at the end of the street and leaned on a rusted mailbox, breathing hard. She could still see Liam's face in her mind, the way he'd looked when he asked if he could fix the rocket, like he wanted to believe he was worth saving. And Brian, sitting across from her on the porch, jaw tight, words few. Not denying it, not defending himself, just absorbing. But that didn't change the fact that he'd let his son believe he was the one who broke their family. Emily pulled out her phone and stared at the screen. For a second, she thought about calling someone, her sister, maybe, but the idea of explaining everything felt impossible. So instead, she turned around and walked back. Brian was still on the porch when she returned. He looked like he hadn't moved, like he'd frozen in the shape of regret. She sat down beside him. Not close. He didn't speak. She did. "I'm not here to judge you," she said, eyes forward. "I'm here for Liam." Brian nodded once. "I know, but you have to be honest. With me. With him. Eventually." He nodded again. "I didn't sleep with her," he said quietly. Emily's eyes slid toward him. "I flirted," he admitted. "It started out stupid. Harmless, I thought. Then it wasn't. I never touched her, but Diane saw the messages. I had deleted most of them, but she found a few I missed." Emily stayed silent. "I'd convinced myself Diane was already pulling away, that she didn't love me the same anymore. I used that as an excuse to chase attention somewhere else." He laughed bitterly. "It wasn't even about Anna. She was just convenient. Someone who told me I was still interesting." Emily clenched her jaw. "Did Liam ever see anything?" she asked. Brian shook his head. "God, no. Never." She turned back to face the yard. The night was still, except for the occasional chirp of a cricket. "She didn't leave because of Liam," Emily said. "But he still thinks it's his fault. And if we don't tell him the truth, at least some of it, he'll carry that forever." Brian stared into the dark. "What am I supposed to say? That I was the reason his mom walked out?" Emily looked at him hard. "No. You say you made mistakes. You say it wasn't his fault. And you tell him the truth doesn't make her love him any less." Brian closed his eyes. "I don't know if I can do that." Emily stood. "Then you better figure it out. Because he deserves better than a half-truth." The next day, Liam didn't ask about the letter. He acted like nothing had happened, as if the previous night's explosion of light and hope had been enough to reset him. But Emily knew better. Grief didn't vanish. It curled into corners, came back in echoes. They sat in the living room building a new Lego structure. This one had a bridge. Emily didn't ask what it was for. After a long silence, Liam spoke. "If she saw the rocket," he said, eyes on the pieces in his hand. Do you think she forgives me? Emily didn't hesitate. Yes. He nodded like he wanted to believe her. Then he said, do you believe people can be two things at once? What do you mean? Like, good and mean, or kind and still bad? Emily breathed in. Yes. People are never just one thing, even when we want them to be. Liam nodded again. I think she was both, he said. My mom. She loved me, but she was really sad. And sometimes she scared me. Emily's heart broke a little. She tried, Liam. She really did. But sometimes love isn't enough to fix the pain people carry. He clicked two bricks together. I wish she had told me. I think she wanted to protect you, Emily said. But in the end, I think the thing that scared her most was that you'd see how much she was hurting. Liam looked up. Did you ever see her cry? Emily hesitated. Once. In the school parking lot. She didn't know I saw. I asked her if she was okay. She said yes. Liam nodded slowly. She always said yes. That night, Brian came into the living room after dinner. Liam was drawing on the floor, music playing low on Emily's phone beside him. Brian's hands were tucked in his pockets, his face pale. Liam, he said, can I talk to you for a minute? Emily looked up. So did Liam. Brian sat down beside his son, cross-legged, mirroring him. I need to tell you something. Liam watched him, quiet. It's about your mom. And about that night. Liam looked over at Emily, eyes wide. She gave him a small nod. I'll stay right here. Brian cleared his throat. I made a mistake, he said. A big one. Before your mom left, she found something on my phone. Messages. From someone I worked with. I didn't cheat, but I was dishonest. And I hurt her. Liam's mouth opened, but nothing came out. Brian kept going. She left because of me. Not you. And I should have told you sooner. I let you carry this guilt like it was yours, and that's not fair. You were a kid. You are a kid. Liam's hands were shaking now. She told me. She told me I ruined everything. She was angry, Brian said quickly. And heartbroken. She was speaking from a place of pain, not truth. You didn't ruin anything, buddy. I did. Liam's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me before? Brian's face collapsed. Because I was ashamed. Emily reached over and touched Liam's shoulder. He didn't pull away. She hated me, Liam whispered. No, Emily said. She hated what was happening. That's different. Liam blinked hard. I thought I killed her. Brian's face crumpled. No, son, he whispered. No, you didn't. They sat like that for a long time, in a fragile circle of truth and forgiveness and pain. After Liam went to bed, quieter than usual, but somehow lighter, Brian came to Emily in the hallway. I don't deserve to be forgiven, he said. Emily looked at him. That's not your call to make. He nodded. Then, are you going to leave? She paused. Do you want me to? I want what's best for him. Emily studied him. So do I. She started to walk away, then stopped. Make sure you earn back his trust, she said. Every day. Then she disappeared into the guest room, leaving Brian in the hall with everything he'd built and everything he'd broken. The next morning, Liam didn't speak much. He poured his cereal, stirred it absently, and let it go soggy without eating a bite. The sunlight in the kitchen felt heavier than usual, like it was watching. Brian sat across from him, elbows on the table, a quiet apology in every blink. He didn't push. He just stayed. It was the most present Emily had ever seen him. Emily stood at the sink, rinsing out a mug, waiting, letting the stillness breathe. Eventually, Liam spoke. Can we go somewhere today? Brian looked up. Where? Liam shrugged. I don't know. Away. Emily turned. What kind of away? Liam poked at his cereal. Someplace quiet. Brian glanced at her, unsure. Emily nodded. I know a place. They drove 30 minutes into the hills. Emily directed them to a trail that ran along a shallow creek. Nothing steep, nothing wild. Just trees and sky and the sound of water moving over stone. Liam walked ahead, hands in his pockets, watching the ground like it might trip him. Emily followed a few steps behind. Brian lagged even farther. None of them spoke until they reached a bend in the path where the creek widened into a calm pool. Emily pointed to a flat rock near the edge. Liam sat without being told. Emily lowered herself beside him, folding her legs. Brian hung back on the trail, half out of sight. Liam tossed a pebble into the water. It plunked softly and vanished. I've been thinking, he said. Emily waited. What if people are like glass? Like, you can drop them once and they crack. And then everything after that just pushes the cracks deeper. She looked out at the water. That's true, she said. But some people get put back together. Not the same way, but stronger in places. Liam frowned. Like scars. Exactly. Another pebble. Another ripple. I don't know how to stop being mad at him, Liam admitted. You don't have to stop yet, she said gently. You just have to feel it. Liam nodded. He lied. Emily didn't flinch. Yeah, he did. He leaned back on his hands. But I lied too. I told Mom I hated her. Emily turned. Liam, listen to me. There is nothing you said that made her leave. That pain, that was already inside her. And the only person who made the choice to walk away was her. Not you. He stared at the water. I miss her every day, he said. I know, Emily whispered. But you still get to keep the parts of her that were good. You don't have to give those up. He looked over at her, eyes glassy. I don't want to forget. You won't. He looked back down. I want to go back to therapy. Emily smiled. That's brave. No, it's just, he swallowed. I don't want to feel like this forever. Emily sat with that for a second, heart full. Then she called back over her shoulder. Brian? He stepped forward like he'd been summoned from a trial. Liam didn't look at him. I want to go back to therapy. Brian blinked. Okay, of course. I'll make the call today. Liam nodded. And I don't want to talk about this again. Not yet. Brian nodded, too. I understand. Liam glanced at Emily. But I'll talk to you. Brian exhaled, a breath half pain, half relief. I'm just glad you're talking, he said. That night, as Emily packed up her things to leave for the evening, Brian hovered in the hallway. You're going, he asked. Just for the night. He nodded. Then, softer, thank you. Emily gave him a long look. Don't thank me. He hesitated. I meant it. You didn't just help Liam. You held us both together. She zipped her bag. I didn't do anything you couldn't have done yourself. He frowned. I'm not sure that's true. Well, she said, figure out how to make it true from now on. He looked down. Do you ever think about staying? She froze for half a second. Then, not unless you mean it for real. He looked up. I do. Emily studied him. You're not ready. He didn't argue. Didn't push. Will you come back tomorrow? He asked. She nodded. If you need me. We do. He looked so different now. Smaller. More honest. Like a man learning to walk barefoot again. When Emily got back to her apartment, she didn't unpack. She just sat on the couch, shoes still on, staring at nothing. There was a message from her sister, a couple unread emails, a new ad about meal kits. She ignored them all. Then, without really meaning to, she pulled out her notebook, the one she hadn't touched since she left her last job, and started to write. Just 2 words. Liam Holt. Then under it, 12 years old. Carries things too big for his shoulders. Smart. Sensitive. Braver than he knows. The words kept coming. A page. Then 2. She didn't know why. Maybe she was writing it down because she couldn't say it out loud. Maybe because someone had to. The next day, when she returned to the Holt house, Liam opened the door before she could knock. I made something, he said. He stepped aside, and she followed him into the living room. On the table was a new model. A bridge made of Legos, perfectly symmetrical, spanning 2 flat platforms. What's it called? She asked. He shrugged. It's just a bridge. She smiled. It's beautiful. He didn't say anything. Just picked it up and placed it in her hands. You can keep it, he said. Emily looked at him, startled. Are you sure? Yeah. He looked down at the floor, scuffing his toe against the rug. You helped me build the other one. And that one flew away. She hugged it to her chest like something sacred. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded, eyes still low. Then he whispered, almost too quiet to hear. Can you stay for a while? Emily didn't answer right away. Liam's voice had barely carried the words, but the weight of them hit her square in the chest. They weren't casual. They weren't polite. They were a door, cracked open with more trust than he'd ever shown. She crouched so they were eye level. I can stay, she said, her voice calm and sure. For as long as you need. Liam gave the smallest nod. Then he turned and disappeared down the hallway like the conversation hadn't happened. Brian came into the room a moment later, rubbing sleep from his face. He looked surprised to see Emily still holding the Lego bridge. He gave you that. Emily nodded. He said I helped build it. Brian leaned against the wall. That's the first time he's given anything away since you know. Yeah, she said. I know. The days that followed were quieter. Liam didn't spiral. He didn't act out. But he didn't bounce back either. The air around him was different. Lighter, yes, but also careful. Like someone walking across ice that had only just begun to freeze over. Emily adjusted with him. She shortened their work sessions, giving him space. She swapped flashcards for quiet walks. Instead of talking through things directly, they played games that nudged at emotions from the side, guessing each other's thoughts, pretending to be characters from old cartoons he used to love. One afternoon, she brought over a board game about building cities. Liam stared at the box. It's for 3 players. I know. Brian, from the kitchen, looked up. You mean me? Emily smiled. Well, I'm not playing by myself. Liam hesitated, then gave a slow nod. Okay, but you have to read the rules. No cheating. It wasn't just a game. It was a truce. That night, after the game ended in a rare tie, Brian walked Emily to the door. Something shifted, he said quietly. He's softer. He's healing, Emily said. But healing is never a straight line. Brian glanced down. I want to keep this going. For real. Even if you ever move on. Emily raised an eyebrow. You thinking that far ahead? I'm trying not to. But I also don't want to pretend this hasn't mattered. She studied him. It has. For all of us. He stepped forward. You changed something in this house. I don't know how to explain it. It just feels warmer. Emily didn't answer right away. Then, that wasn't me. That was him. Letting us in. Brian's gaze lingered. Still, you're the one who opened the door. He leaned in, tentative. Emily stopped him with a hand on his chest. Not harsh, but firm. Not now. Brian nodded. Okay. She stepped out onto the porch. And maybe not ever, she added. His eyes flickered. But he didn't argue. Take care of him, Brian. I will. The next week brought rain. Not the dramatic kind. Just a steady, gray drizzle that soaked everything in slow motion. Emily arrived one afternoon to find Liam pacing the hallway, clearly agitated. I don't want to go, he snapped before she could speak. She stepped inside and set down her bag. Go where? The school meeting. Emily glanced at Brian, who stood behind him holding a permission slip. I told him it's just a check-in, Brian explained. To see how he's doing with the new IEP. It's not a big deal. It is a big deal, Liam said. They're going to talk about me while I'm sitting there. I hate that. Emily crouched. You can tell them how you feel. They don't care, he muttered. They just want me to act like everyone else. Her voice softened. What do you want, Liam? He looked down. To be normal. She reached forward carefully and touched his arm. You are normal. You're your kind of normal. And if they don't understand that, then we explain it to them. He didn't speak. Brian stepped forward. I'll go with you. You won't have to say a word if you don't want to. Liam blinked. You're not working? Not today. There was a long pause. Then Liam said, Can Emily come too? Emily looked up, surprised. Brian smiled. If she's willing. I'm in, she said, already grabbing her jacket. The school meeting was held in a sterile little room that smelled faintly of whiteboard markers and stress. Liam sat between Emily and Brian, arms folded, gaze fixed on a poster across the room that said, Every mind is a different map. The school counselor, Ms. Landry, smiled gently. Liam, we just wanted to talk about how your transition back has been going. Your teachers say they've noticed you're a little quieter than last year. I'm allowed to be quiet, he said flatly. Yes, you are, she replied. But we also want to make sure you feel supported. Emily watched him carefully. He didn't fidget, but she could feel the tension radiating off him. We made a few changes to your IEP, Ms. Landry continued. You'll have access to a quieter space when you need it. And extra time on assignments. I don't need extra time, he snapped. Emily leaned in. It's not about need, remember? It's about what helps. He didn't answer. Then suddenly he said, Do they know about my mom? The room froze. Ms. Landry looked at Brian, then at Emily. Emily gave a slight nod. No, Ms. Landry said carefully. Only what your father chose to share. Liam sat up straighter. She died. Last year. And I thought it was my fault. But it wasn't. The room was dead silent. Then he added, I still feel messed up. But I'm not broken. Emily swallowed hard. Ms. Landry blinked, clearly caught off guard. Thank you for telling us that, Liam. He looked at Emily. She gave him the smallest smile. You did it, she thought. You told the truth. In the car ride home, Liam was quiet. Then he said, I want to build something else. Something big. Emily turned in her seat. What kind of big? I don't know yet. Maybe a ship. Or a tower. She nodded. I'll help. He looked over at Brian. Will you? Brian smiled. I'm in. And for the first time in a long time, Liam grinned. Not just a smile. A real grin, lopsided, dorky, joyful. Emily leaned back in her seat, hand resting lightly on the Lego bridge tucked into her bag. There were still cracks, still pieces that didn't fit. But somewhere in the middle of it all, they were building something new. Together, they started building the next day. It began with a single piece, a baseplate Liam pulled from a dusty bin in the garage. He laid it on the kitchen table like it was sacred, then turned to Emily and said, "We're making a tower. Not like a castle. Something modern. Glass and steel. The kind you see in cities." Emily grinned. "A skyscraper." Liam nodded. "But it has to be strong. Not just tall." Brian joined in after lunch, awkward at first, unsure where to put his hands or how to read the instructions Liam rattled off. But he listened. That was new. And Liam noticed. They worked for hours, the three of them crowded around the table, stepping around each other like they'd done it for years. It wasn't just a tower. It was a test. That evening, as they cleaned up the scattered bricks and swept crumbs off the table, Brian asked Emily if she'd stay for dinner. "I'm ordering in," he said. "Pizza, Liam's choice." Emily hesitated. "I don't want to overstay." Brian gave her a look. "You're holding a spatula in one hand and a Lego beam in the other. I think that ship has sailed." Liam glanced up. "Extra mushrooms?" Emily made a face. "You're a monster." Brian laughed. "See? You're family now." The word hit harder than it should have. Family. Emily hadn't felt like part of one in years. Not since her brother. Not since her father shut down, bottle in hand, grief eating away what was left of him. She scrubbed a stubborn spot on the counter and said nothing. Later, after Liam had gone to bed and the pizza box sat empty on the coffee table, Brian brought out 2 glasses and a bottle of red wine. Emily eyed it. "You trying to impress me?" Brian smiled faintly. "No, I'm trying not to be a coward." He poured them each a glass. They sat on the porch, knees brushing under the small table. "I meant what I said," he said after a while. "You're part of this. Of us." Emily stared at her wine, swirling it gently. "I don't know what I am to you," she said. Brian looked at her, patient. "You're someone who saw my son before I remembered how to." She laughed under her breath. "That's poetic, but not exactly specific." Brian didn't flinch. "I care about you. A lot." Emily looked out into the night. "You're still grieving." "So are you." She didn't answer. Then, quietly, she said, "I never told you how my brother died." Brian waited. "He drowned," she said, "in a lake back home. I was 9. He was 17. I dared him to swim across." Brian didn't move. He laughed, said he could make it. I teased him until he jumped in. Halfway through, he started struggling. We all thought he was joking, but he wasn't. She swallowed. No one got to him in time. The silence between them stretched. "I'm sorry," Brian said finally. Emily nodded. "So when I met Liam and saw how much guilt he carried, I knew exactly what it felt like." Brian looked at her with something deeper than pity. It was understanding. "I think we all carry ghosts," he said. "But you helped Liam stop being afraid of his." Emily looked at him. "And what about yours?" Brian didn't answer, but his hand slid across the table. He didn't touch her, just left his hand there. Close. She didn't move away. 3 days later, the tower was done. Liam stood back, hands on his hips, inspecting the result like an architect waiting for applause. It wasn't perfect. Some pieces were off-center, the colors didn't all match, but it was tall and sturdy and balanced. "Stable," he said, almost to himself. Emily smiled. "It's amazing." Brian whistled. 10 stories, at least. Liam turned to her. "We should make something else." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Already?" "Yeah. I think I want to build a train next. One that connects everything." Emily blinked. "Like a bridge between cities?" Liam nodded. "Between everything." She felt something catch in her throat. "I like that," she said. "Let's do it." That night, after Liam fell asleep reading an old book he hadn't touched in months, Brian found Emily sitting on the edge of the couch. She was staring at the Lego bridge he'd moved to a side shelf, displayed like a piece of art. He sat beside her. "I've been thinking," he said. She didn't look at him. "About what?" "About what happens when you stop blaming everyone else for the thing that broke." Emily nodded slowly. "And I'm still angry," he admitted. "But not at her anymore." "Not really." Emily turned to him. Brian's voice was quieter now. "I'm angry that I didn't fight harder, that I didn't make space for her pain before it swallowed her." "She made her own choices," Emily said. "I know, but I could have made it easier for her to stay." Emily leaned back. "You're making it easier for Liam to stay," she said. "That counts." He looked at her. What about you? She didn't speak for a long moment. Then, I'm not going anywhere. Not yet. His shoulders softened. And for the first time since they met, the silence between them didn't feel unfinished. It felt earned. But peace is never permanent. Not in real life. 2 days later, a letter came in the mail addressed to the estate of Diane Holt. Liam brought it to Emily while she was helping him organize his school binder. "What's this?" he asked, holding it out. Emily took it carefully. The envelope was stiff. Official. Return address, Jackson County Family Court. Brian appeared in the doorway just as she opened it. He took one look and paled. "What is it?" Liam asked again. Emily pulled out the paper and read it quickly. Then her eyes met Brian's. "Someone's filed for guardianship," she said. Liam frowned. "What does that mean?" Emily looked down at the letter. "It means someone thinks they should be raising you instead of your dad." Liam's face twisted. "Who?" Brian took the paper and scanned it, his jaw clenched tight. He looked up. "My mother," he said. Emily's heart dropped. Brian stared at the letter like it might burst into flames. Emily stood, instinctively stepping between him and Liam. Not protectively. Liam didn't need protecting from his father. But something had shifted, and she felt it in her bones. Liam looked between them. "What does that mean?" "Grandma wants me to live with her." Brian didn't answer. Emily knelt beside Liam. "This letter says she's asked the court to decide who should take care of you. But I already have someone," he said, voice rising. "I have my dad. And you." Brian finally spoke. "She thinks I'm unfit." Liam blinked. "Because of Mom?" Brian nodded slowly. "Because of what happened. Because I didn't see the signs. Because I let her walk out." Liam's face twisted. "That's not fair." Emily stood. "It's not." Brian looked at her. "What do we do?" She took the letter from his hand, eyes scanning it again. Her voice was firm now, all business. "We get a lawyer." The next few days passed in a haze of tension and paperwork. Brian made calls. Emily found a family law attorney who agreed to take the case on short notice. Liam watched from the background, his body tense, his face unreadable. "I don't want to go," he whispered to Emily one afternoon as they folded laundry. "You're not going anywhere," she promised. But deep down, she knew it wasn't a guarantee she could make. Not yet. Brian's mother, Catherine Holt, was a retired school principal with a polished voice and a wardrobe that screamed order. She hadn't seen Liam in nearly a year, not since Diane's funeral. Now, she wanted custody. "She says she's worried about Liam's emotional state," Brian said after the initial filing review. "Says I've made unstable choices and brought strangers into the house." Emily raised an eyebrow. "That'd be me, I assume." "She wants to meet you," he added. Emily exhaled. "I'm not afraid of her." "You should be," Brian muttered. "She plays polite. But she's ice underneath." The meeting took place in a coffee shop downtown, Neutral Ground. Catherine arrived first, tall, silver hair perfectly pinned, coat draped like it had been steamed into place. She didn't smile when she saw Emily. She assessed. "So," she said, sliding into the booth. "You're the one my son hired." Emily sat across from her, calm and still. "He didn't hire me to be a therapist. He hired me to help his son." Catherine's eyes narrowed slightly. "And yet you've taken on more than that, haven't you?" Emily didn't blink. "He needed someone. So did Liam." Catherine set her hands on the table, neatly folded. "Let me be clear. I'm not questioning your intentions. I'm questioning your qualifications." "I have 6 years of experience with children on the spectrum," Emily replied evenly. 2 in school settings, 4 in-home. Liam's made measurable progress since I started. I've got data. Notes. Progress reports. Catherine's eyes flickered, caught off guard by the preparation. But Emily wasn't done. "He's sleeping through the night again. His self-regulation's improved. He's initiated social interactions. He made a friend online last week, and he told me about it." "That's new." Catherine stayed silent. Emily leaned forward slightly. "Now let me ask you something," she said. "Why did you wait until now?" Catherine's composure cracked for the first time. "I didn't think he was safe," she said. "But I didn't know what was happening in that house. And now, he's bringing you into Liam's life like your family. That's not stability. That's confusion." Emily's voice was steady. "What you're describing as confusion, he sees as connection." Catherine pursed her lips. "You're not going to be around forever, Ms. Ramos." "No," Emily said. "But I'm here now, and I'm not the one trying to uproot him again." Catherine stood, smoothing her coat. "I'm not your enemy." Emily met her gaze. "Then stop acting like one." That night, Emily told Brian everything. I've faced judges, administrators, school boards. But your mother? She said, pouring herself a glass of water. She could probably convince a tree it was guilty. Brian laughed grimly. She made me write thank you notes to relatives I'd never met. On my birthday, they sat on the porch, watching rain drizzle off the edge of the roof. She loves order, Brian said. She thinks love is measured in rules and structure. It's how she protected herself from my father. Emily turned. Did he hurt her? Brian shook his head. No, but he left. I was 9, and she kept everything standing. Alone. She never forgave him for abandoning us. So now, she tries to control everything to stop history from repeating. Emily leaned her head against the back of the chair. She's afraid, she said softly. Brian nodded. But she's not the one who gets to decide how Liam heals. He looked at her. You don't have to stay in the middle of this. Emily turned to him. I'm not in the middle. I'm with him. And Brian realized then, she wasn't just fighting for Liam. She was choosing him. Every day, the court date was set for 2 weeks later. In the meantime, Liam began to worry. It started with questions. What if she wins? Will I have to leave school? Can you come with me if I move? Then the nightmares returned. Emily sat with him one night on the floor beside his bed, his face pale in the blue light of his moon lamp. She's lying, he whispered. I know, Emily said. I don't want to go with her. You're not. But what if the judge doesn't believe us? Emily took his hand. Then we show them. Everything. The tower, the bridge, the games. The truth. Liam nodded slowly. Then, voice small. Will you still be here? Even if she wins. Emily's throat tightened. I'll always find you, she said. And meant every word. The courthouse was cold. Not physically, but in the way that fluorescent lights and neutral-colored walls seemed designed to smother warmth. Everything smelled like printer paper and nervous sweat. Liam sat beside Emily on the wooden bench outside the hearing room, picking at the skin around his thumbnail until it turned red. Emily placed her hand gently over his. Remember what we talked about? He nodded, eyes on the floor. You don't have to say anything unless the judge asks. You're not on trial. I still feel like I'm in trouble, he mumbled. You're not. He looked up at her then. She's going to try to take me away. Emily didn't flinch. She's going to try, but we're going to fight. Across the hall, Catherine Holt stood in a pale gray suit, immaculate as ever. Her expression didn't change when she saw Liam. Not even when he looked away. Brian paced a few feet down the hall, too restless to sit. His lawyer, a soft-spoken man named Riley, was reviewing a folder full of notes Emily had helped compile. It all felt surreal, like they were about to argue over a piece of furniture, not a child. The courtroom was smaller than Liam expected. No gallery, just 2 long tables, a raised bench, and an American flag in the corner that drooped a little to the left. Judge Marin stepped in. Older, gray hair, glasses she wore low on her nose. She looked exhausted, or maybe just used to watching families fall apart. We'll keep this informal for now, she said. I've read the statements. I want to hear from both parties before I make any interim decisions. Catherine's lawyer started. Polished, rehearsed, full of subtle jabs. Concerned about the stability of Mr. Holt's household, recent emotional turmoil, presence of an unlicensed caregiver acting outside her scope. Emily kept her face still, but her heart pounded. Liam stared at the table. When it was Riley's turn, he stood calmly and laid out their case. Liam's progress, Brian's willingness to seek therapy, parenting classes, everything they could document. Emily's role, explained clearly and factually, without romanticizing. Then, without warning, Riley turned to Emily. Ms. Ramos, he said, would you be willing to speak on behalf of the child's emotional development? She glanced at Brian. He gave a small nod. She rose. I'm not a therapist, Emily said, voice steady. I'm not a parent. I've been working with Liam for just over 2 months, but I've spent nearly every day with him. I've seen how he copes, how he rebuilds, and how he trusts. Judge Marin tilted her head. Go on. When I met him, he was barely speaking. He blamed himself for his mother's death. He had withdrawn completely. He showed signs of anxiety, sleep disruption, emotional dysregulation. He wasn't living. He was just surviving. Liam looked down, but he didn't pull away. Today, Emily continued, he communicates his needs. He seeks connection. He's working through his grief in therapy. He still struggles, but he's healing. Judge Marin folded her hands. And what role do you believe Mr. Holt has played in that healing? Emily paused. Then, he shows up. She looked at Brian. Every day? Even when he's afraid? Even when he doesn't know what to say? He's taken accountability. He's given Liam space. And structure. And a willingness to learn. Judge Marin nodded. And Catherine Holt. Emily turned. I believe she cares about Liam. But she hasn't been present in his life. She's stepping in now, not because she's ready to raise him, but because she's afraid of what it means if she doesn't. There was a long silence. Then Judge Marin leaned back in her chair. Thank you. Emily sat down, pulse thrumming in her ears. After a recess, Catherine requested to speak. I raised Brian alone, she said. He was stubborn, sensitive, prone to emotional shutdowns. And now I see those same traits in Liam. She looked at the judge. I'm not trying to take him out of spite. I'm trying to protect him from the same neglect I watched destroy my son's marriage. She turned, eyes sharp. Liam needs consistency. He needs boundaries. What he doesn't need is a revolving door of unqualified adults who offer comfort without accountability. Brian flinched. Emily said nothing. Judge Marin looked at Liam. Would you like to speak? Liam's eyes widened. Emily whispered, You don't have to. But he stood. He walked to the center of the room, small hands clenched at his sides. And in a quiet, clear voice, he said, I want to stay with my dad. Catherine's face hardened. I miss my mom, Liam continued. I think about her all the time. I still cry sometimes. But my dad lets me talk about it. He lets me be mad. And Emily, she doesn't make me feel broken. He looked at the judge. I'm not confused. I just need time. And then he sat down. No drama. No breakdown. Just truth. Judge Marin didn't rule that day. She said she'd issue a temporary order within 48 hours while she reviewed all the evidence. They left the courthouse exhausted. In the parking lot, Catherine approached Brian. I'm sorry, she said. Brian turned, stunned. Catherine glanced at Liam, who was already in the car with Emily. I thought I was doing the right thing. I still believe structure matters. But maybe I forgot what love looks like when it's messy. Brian said nothing. She touched his arm. You're doing better than I expected. Then she turned and walked away. That night, back at the house, Liam sat at the table sketching a new blueprint. Emily leaned over his shoulder. What is it? He grinned. It's not a tower. No. It's a train station, he said. But not just for trains. For people, too. So they know where to go. Emily smiled. Brian entered the kitchen holding his phone. His face was unreadable. She stood. Well, she asked. He handed her the screen. The judge's email was short. Interim custody remains with the father. Court supervision recommended. Formal review scheduled in 60 days. Emily exhaled. Brian let out a shaky laugh and dropped into the nearest chair. Liam looked up. Does that mean I'm staying? Brian turned to him. Yeah, buddy. You're staying. Liam jumped up, ran to Emily, and for the first time, without hesitation, he wrapped his arms around her waist. Emily blinked, caught off guard, but then she hugged him back. Tight. The tower had stood. And now, finally, it was time to build something bigger. Liam slept soundly that night for the first time in weeks. Not the half-sleep of fear and clinging shadows, but real, restful sleep. The kind that comes when the worst thing doesn't happen. Emily sat on the back porch with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The house behind her was quiet. Brian was inside, probably asleep on the couch, one arm flung over his eyes like he always did when the world got too loud. She sipped her tea and stared into the night. The custody battle wasn't over. They had 60 days before the final review, 60 days to prove this wasn't just temporary stability, 60 days to keep showing up. But tonight, they had a win, and that mattered. Her phone buzzed beside her. A message from her sister, Ava. Heard what happened. Mom would have been proud of you. Emily stared at it for a while, then typed back. I hope so. The next morning, Liam woke up early and already had toast in the toaster when Emily walked into the kitchen. Someone's feeling productive, she said, rubbing her eyes. He grinned. Can we go to the hardware store? Emily blinked. Before breakfast? I want to build the train platform with real materials. Not just Legos. Wood, glue, paint. She squinted at him. You know how to build with real stuff? He shrugged. No, but I can learn. She smiled. I think we can make that happen. Brian stumbled in wearing mismatched socks. We're doing construction now? Liam looked at him. You in? Brian rubbed his face. Do I have a choice? Emily threw him a smile over her mug. Nope. At the store, Liam moved through the aisles like a man with a mission. He pointed out the kind of wood he wanted, the right color of paint, blue like sky, he said, because the platform needed to feel open, not trapped. Emily watched him, impressed. He didn't ask for permission. He explained. He didn't seek approval. He owned the idea. Brian stayed a step behind, pushing the cart with a quiet look on his face. Not proud, exactly. Something deeper. Something close to awe. They spent the whole weekend working. The garage became a workshop. Liam drew up plans on graph paper. Emily handled the measurements. Brian did the sawing and sanding. Together, they made something rough and imperfect, but solid. The platform took shape slowly. A rectangle of plywood, reinforced underneath, legs cut to the right height. Paint splattered the floor, the table, and once, Brian's jeans. They laughed until they were sore. And then, when it dried, Liam added a sign to the edge of the platform. He'd written it on a strip of cardboard with a Sharpie. All trains welcome. Emily saw it and almost cried. She reached over, tapped the sign. That's a pretty good motto. Liam just grinned. It's not done yet. Got more to add? No, but I want people to sign it. You and Dad. So it knows who helped build it. He handed her the marker first. Her hand shook a little as she wrote her name on the edge of the platform, just below the sign. Then Brian. Then Liam, right in the center. That night, as Emily sat in the guest room flipping through an old journal, Brian knocked softly on the door. She looked up. Hey. He stepped in. Can't sleep. Too much sawdust in your lungs. He grinned, then turned serious. I keep thinking about what you said, that I have 60 days to earn his trust back. Emily closed the journal. You've already started. He sat on the edge of the bed. I don't want this to end when the hearing's over. I want you here. After. Emily's stomach tightened. She wasn't surprised, but she wasn't sure what to say either. I'm not a permanent solution, she said gently. I know, but maybe you're not just a solution anymore. She looked at him. You still think of this as something to fix, she said. But maybe it's just something to live in. Brian was quiet. Then, finally, he said, I'm trying. She nodded. I see that. He reached for her hand, then stopped. You'll tell me if I start screwing it up again? Absolutely, she said. That made him laugh. The next week was calmer. Liam went back to school full-time. He came home talking about a new project in science, a kid who let him sit at their lunch table. He asked Emily to help him write a letter to the teacher about using the quiet room when he needed it. One night, he handed Emily a drawing. It was of the train platform, but bigger, extended tracks running in both directions, a tiny version of himself waving from the edge. I'm going to make a sign like this, he said. For real. She noticed something new on the drawing. Two little figures standing beside Liam. One tall, with dark hair. One shorter, with long curls. I see you added me, she said softly. He looked up. Of course I did. Then he walked off, as casual as if he'd just offered her a glass of water. But Emily sat with the drawing in her hands for a long, long time. Then, one Thursday morning, as Liam packed his backpack, he paused and looked up. Hey, Em. She turned. Did you ever forgive yourself? He asked. The question stopped her cold. She set down the bowl she was rinsing. I'm still working on it, she said honestly. Liam nodded. Me too. And in that moment, more than any court decision, more than any hug, more than any letter, Emily knew. They were both getting there. Together. The next few weeks blurred into something almost normal. Liam fell into a rhythm. School, home, a little homework, then garage time. The train platform had grown. What started as a rectangle had evolved into a winding track with tiny hand-painted stations, cardboard tunnels, and wooden signs with names like Second Chance and Forgive Street. He even made a sign for Emily's room that said staff only, which she pretended to be offended by. Emily started waking up without that tight feeling in her chest, the one that used to remind her every morning that something was unfinished. She still thought about her brother sometimes, more than she said, but the ache was softer now, less like a bruise, more like a scar. Brian, for his part, stayed out of the way when he needed to and leaned in when it mattered. He went to Liam's therapy appointments, sat in on IEP meetings, learned how to listen without trying to solve everything. It didn't come naturally to him, but he kept trying. And every once in a while, when Emily caught him standing in the kitchen doing dishes or packing Liam's lunch, she'd think, maybe he's becoming the man Diane always hoped he'd be. But they never talked about them. Not directly. Until one Friday night. They were sitting outside, late, after Liam had gone to bed. The porch light cast a soft halo over the railings. The night was warm but quiet, like it didn't want to interrupt. Brian had a beer. Emily had tea. He spoke first. So, the lawyer says the final hearing's basically a formality now. Emily looked up. She's not fighting it anymore. She sent a letter to the court. Said she's withdrawing her petition. That she's seen enough to know Liam's safe here. Emily exhaled. That's big. She wants to visit. Maybe once a month. I said we'd take it slow. Emily nodded. Then Brian said, carefully, so where does that leave you? Emily stared out at the yard. I've been asking myself the same thing. I don't want you to go. She turned to him. He wasn't pressuring, just stating a fact. She took a sip of tea. I didn't come here to stay. You know that. He nodded. But now that you're here, I don't know what this house would be without you. I'm not the glue, Brian. I was just what was needed when everything cracked. But you're not just that anymore. Silence. She looked down. I don't want to be a reason Liam falls apart again if I leave. Then stay in a way that doesn't make him depend on you to breathe. Help him keep building his own air. Emily smiled faintly. That was kind of poetic. Brian grinned. Don't get used to it. The next day, Liam came home from school with a permission slip and a problem. It's for a field trip, he said. A museum thing. But I don't want to go. Why not? Emily asked. Because it's loud. And it smells weird. And the last time I went, I almost had a meltdown and someone filmed it. Emily felt her chest tighten. They what? He shrugged. It was middle school. That's what they do. Brian looked like he might drive to the school and fight a 7th grader. Emily knelt beside Liam. So why is this one different? I kind of want to go. This time. She blinked. Then what's stopping you? I don't want to freak out again. Emily thought for a moment. What if I came? Not as a teacher. Just as your person. Liam's eyebrows knit. Like a support person? Exactly. He hesitated. Would the school allow that? Brian asked. I'll call and ask. Liam nodded slowly. Okay. But if it smells weird, I'm leaving. Fair, Emily said. The day of the trip, Emily rode on the bus with Liam in the last row. He wore headphones and brought his own lunch. She watched him navigate the crowd carefully, still unsure, still scanning, but stronger. When they got to the museum, he stayed close. But he stayed. He stood in front of a glass case with old train parts and whispered, I think I like these better than the Legos. She nudged him. You're allowed to change your mind. Later, when the group moved too fast and he needed a break, she guided him to a bench in the quiet hallway. They didn't talk, just sat. That night, he drew a new sign for the platform. It said, Museum Line, Emily rides free. She taped it to the miniature gate and didn't say a word. 2 nights before the final hearing, Liam knocked on Emily's door. He held something behind his back. What's up? She asked. He stepped in. I made something. She raised an eyebrow. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from behind his back and handed it to her. She opened it slowly. It was a certificate, handwritten in blue marker and stamped with a fingerprint at the bottom. Certificate of staying. Awarded to Emily Ramos. For not leaving when it got hard. Her throat closed. She looked up. Liam wasn't smiling. He was serious. Like he knew what this meant. I thought you should have it, he said. In case you ever forget. She folded it carefully, like it was a priceless map. Thank you, she whispered. He nodded. You can keep it in your bag. So if you leave, you take it with you. Emily swallowed hard. What if I stayed without it? He tilted his head. Then I'll make you another one. The night before court, Emily couldn't sleep. She paced the house after midnight, checking locks, folding a stray towel, adjusting a crooked picture frame. Eventually, she ended up in the garage. The train platform was still there. Still sturdy. Still blue. She ran her fingers along the edge, over her name, over Brian's, over Liam's. Then she picked up a marker and added a 4th name, one she hadn't said out loud in a long time. Miguel, her brother. Not because he was part of the platform, but because she knew now, he would have loved this. She whispered into the dark, We're okay, Migs. Then she went back inside. The day of the final hearing came with little fanfare. Judge Marin reviewed the paperwork, asked Liam if he still wanted to stay where he was. He said, yes. Firm. Clear. Catherine stood and said she believed Brian had made unexpected progress. The judge smiled faintly. Unexpected progress is the best kind. She looked at Brian, then Emily. I think this family has found something that works. I'm not going to disrupt that. Then she turned to Liam. You've been through more than most kids your age, and you've handled it with honesty and bravery. I hope the adults in your life keep earning your trust. Liam didn't smile, but he nodded, and that was enough. That night, they celebrated with cake. It was store-bought. Ugly. Way too much frosting. Liam decorated it himself with shaky blue icing. It said, "We built it." Emily didn't need to ask what it was, because they had, and they were still building. Liam woke up early. Earlier than usual. Earlier than the sun. He tiptoed into the kitchen in socks that didn't match, poured himself cereal, and stood at the back window while he ate, watching the sky warm from deep blue to soft gold. Emily joined him a few minutes later, wrapped in a robe, hair pulled back. She yawned into her coffee mug. "You okay?" she asked. Liam nodded. "Just thinking. Dangerous." He gave her a side glance. "Funny." She leaned on the counter beside him. "I was wondering," he said after a while. "Do you think people ever stop being sad? Like, completely?" Emily thought about it. Really thought. "No," she said. "But I think you learn how to carry it differently." Liam took a spoonful of cereal. "Like a backpack?" "Yeah," she said. "Some days it's heavier. Some days you forget it's there. But it's part of you now." He nodded slowly. "I think mine got lighter." Emily looked at him. "Why do you think that is?" He didn't hesitate. "Because I stopped pretending I wasn't carrying it." She reached over and ruffled his hair. "You're gonna make your therapist cry if you start dropping lines like that." He grinned, chewing. "I want to build something today," he said. "Another train?" "No," he said. "I think I'm done with trains." That surprised her. "Yeah. I want to build a house." They cleared the table after breakfast. Got out the Legos, the scrap wood, the glue gun. Brian joined them mid-morning with coffee and a half-awake look that said he wasn't quite caught up. "We're building a house now?" he asked. Liam nodded. "With different rooms. And everyone gets to design their own space." Brian raised an eyebrow. "Do I at least get a door?" "You get a whole wing," Liam said. Emily smirked. "Can mine have books and plants?" Liam shrugged. "You're the architect of your own destiny." Brian laughed. "What are they teaching you at that school?" By the afternoon, the house had walls. Crude ones, pieced together from cardboard and plastic and imagination. Liam built the foundation himself. Made sure it was balanced before anything went up. "It's not perfect," he said, eyeing a crooked corner. "It's perfect enough," Emily said. They made signs for the rooms. Brian's wing, Emily's library, Liam's observatory. There was even a roof. But no doors. "Where are the entrances?" Brian asked. Liam pointed. "No doors. Just openings." Brian tilted his head. "Why?" Liam shrugged. "So no one ever feels locked in. Or out." Emily looked at him. And for the first time in a long time, she felt it. Hope. Real and heavy and grounded. The following week, Emily got a call. It was a job offer. A good one. Full-time, with benefits. A special education coordinator role at a district 2 hours north. She didn't say no. Not right away. Instead, she sat with it. Told Brian. Told Liam. They didn't try to convince her either way. Brian just said, "You'd be amazing there." Liam said, "If you go, can we still call you?" She nodded. "Every week." He added, "Every Thursday." She smiled. "Okay, Thursdays." And then he surprised her again. "You should take it." She blinked. "Why?" "Because it's yours," he said. "And because I think I'm okay now." Emily's heart caught. "You're better than okay." He leaned his head on her arm. "Just for a second." "Yeah," he said. "I think I am." On her last day in the house, she packed quietly. Brian helped load her car. No speeches. No big scene. They stood on the porch, watching the sun settle behind the trees. "You changed everything," he said. She looked at him. "So did you. I want to stay in touch." "I know." He hesitated. "I still care about you." "I know," she said again, softer this time. He didn't push it further. He didn't have to. They weren't a love story. They were something else. Something stronger. Emily pulled out of the driveway just after sunset. Liam stood in the garage, arms crossed, watching her go. In his hand, he held a folded piece of paper. After she turned the corner, he walked inside and taped it to the wall above the train platform. Still there, still standing. It read, "She was hired to help his special needs son, but she gave the whole family hope." And underneath, in smaller handwriting, "P.S. She never stopped being ours."